Hi, welcome to my channel, Wanderlusting Lawyer. If this is your first time here, welcome. This isn't the type of video I normally create. Normally, I talk about my experience on the Camino de Santiago hiking pilgrimage through Spain. So if you're interested in that, please check out my other videos. But today I'm going to talk about something that is more generally related to travel, and so in some ways is related to my experience going to Spain. Specifically, what do you do if you, like me, accidentally let your global entry membership expire? If you're here watching this video, you probably already know what global entry is, but just as a quick recap, it is a US-based program that allows citizens and green card holders and maybe a few other groups of people, if they are approved, to have access to TSA PreCheck, so expedited security at domestic airports, and also expedited immigration process upon arriving back to the United States. So long story short, it saves a ton of time when you're traveling. So it's obviously something that a lot of people want, and once you get it, you don't want to lose it. But what do you do if, like me, you did lose it? Well, before I go into that and give you the positive outcome that I had, my pre-tip is don't lose your status like I did. Pay attention to the emails that you get in the prior months telling you that your global entry membership will soon be expiring. In fact, you can reapply for to stay in the program up to a year before your membership is set to expire. Normally, membership is between 5 and 6 years, depending on when your birthday falls in the window after you've been approved, and it expires on your birthday after that 5th full year. So keep that in mind. Look at your card, log into your trusted traveler account to see when it's expiring, and submit your renewal application early. Obviously, if you're here, you probably didn't do that, but maybe you're still in luck. So gather the information that you need now. You'll need work, employment history for the past 5 years, address history, which Amazon is a great resource for that. If you can't remember all your old addresses, just go into your address book. You'll need any updated criminal history information, the countries that you visited in that time, things like that. Application doesn't take too long. I think it took me an hour. I filled it out in a crazy haze because I realized my application had expired, my membership had expired. And actually the way that I found that out was I checked in for a domestic flight, got my boarding pass on my phone, my mobile boarding pass, and it did not have that beautiful green checkbox saying TSA PreCheck. And I just knew I had never not gotten it before since my entry into the program. And I remembered seeing your membership was expiring soon emails. I just in my head convinced myself I had until July instead of May. And I was actually waiting to open a new credit card that would reimburse the fee. So it was so stupid. I let it expire by 11 days. And I frantically started searching for a video like the one I'm making for you guys today. I could find very few resources about what happens if your membership expires. So my first real tip, if you're at the point where it's gone, it's expired, even if you're 1 day late, you need to accept that you've lost your status, at least temporarily. There's still hope, and I'm going to go into that, but you have to just accept that there is no magic fix. Don't do what I did and lose time calling the trusted travel number, waiting. I think I waited like 45 minutes to talk to somebody just to be told, yeah, sorry, there's absolutely nothing we can do. It doesn't matter if it's 1 day late, 100 days late. You have to just wait until they address your application. Don't fret too much because you're still in a separate pool of applicants. You're not a new application. It still is processed as a renewal. So I've heard some people's renewals get processed really quickly. Mine ended up taking almost 7 weeks, and I'll get into that, but just accept that it could be a bit of time before you get a decision. And that feels terrible when you've been traveling for 5 to 6 years with the expedited, security procedures and immigration procedures. It's pretty crappy to kind of have to plan to go to the airport up to an hour before when you typically would. So you got to just accept, though, that the status is gone. The best thing you can do, step number 2, is to submit your renewal application. It's all on the Trusted Traveler website. Like I mentioned before, you'll need to make sure you have the information about your addresses, your employment history. The sooner you get it in, the better, because obviously then they can get to processing your application. Now, what happened to me was I submitted my application, and a few days later, my new passport arrived. So then automatically my passport number was no longer the same. My passport information was no longer the same as what I had submitted in my renewal application, because it'll let you upload new documents if you need to. So I had an expired passport connected to my application, which makes me think that that was one of the reasons my application took as long as it did to process. A quick note about that: if this happens to you, or even if you submit your renewal application on time and this happens with respect to your passport, if your account didn't expire, I think you can upload new documentation. But if it has expired, you cannot go back and change your application. What I was told to do when I called the TSA number was to actually go down, just walk into my local global entry office, which luckily for me wasn't too far away, the international airport that's near my house. Get there. I decided to get there first thing in the morning before there was hopefully anybody there. And I walked in and explained that I was told to come there and bring them my new passport so they could add it into the system. Luckily, they were very nice. They seemed bored. There was nobody there. And the gentleman, especially when I said, I called the number, he told me to come here. He did upload it. And then I looked later and it was attached to my application. So I think that was helpful. But that's kind of a tough scenario where, your application could take a long time to review if you don't have valid passport information on hand. Because normally they say just bring it to your interview. But if you don't get conditional approval, how do you get to the interview, right? So that's what I did. And so then as you're waiting, after you've submitted, as you're waiting, I would suggest to wait, maybe give it 2 or 3 weeks. If you don't hear back by then, consider how important having TSA PreCheck specifically is for you, or at least expedited security procedures is for you in the next several months. If it's very important, you may want to consider signing up separately for TSA PreCheck. Yes, it's included in the price of global entry, but if you don't have your global entry valid, you won't have TSA PreCheck. So it may be worth paying the extra $85 to actually get entry, to get a known traveler number through TSA PreCheck. It'll be a different number than the one you already had, and then you can always switch back. I think you would then have 2 valid numbers if your global entry renewal gets approved. But that's a much simpler application. It takes, I don't even know if it took me 10 minutes to fill out the form. You then can pick your interview date then and there. There are so many more places that process these types of interviews. So I was able to get one, I think just a few days out, and you can always go back and change it. Stuff is being canceled all the time. And I actually ended up not having to go because my global entry application was approved literally the day before I was supposed to go to my interview. But my understanding is that after that interview, typical processing time to get your known traveler number is 3 to 5 days. It can take longer, it can take months, but those are from what I've read, those are very few and far between instances. Usually you get it quickly. So at least then, yes, you've paid a bit extra, but you have TSA PreCheck. Clear is another program I don't have membership to because the airport that I go to does not have it, but that gets you through domestic security at domestic airports even more quickly often than TSA PreCheck. I think that might be $100 or $200 yearly fee, but that's another option. And then also look into Mobile Passport. It's an app for your phone. It's free. You upload your passport information, and then as you're arriving from an international trip, you upload the information for your flight. You answer the customs questions, and it generates a QR code. The kicker here is that even though their website, it's a governmental website, even though it says it's applicable and available at a bunch of airports, that's not true. I mean, some airports it is. I can confirm though that at Chicago O'Hare, at least when I came through in July, there was no line. I asked the woman, who was helping direct people, and she said, no, we don't do that anymore. So it's really just the luck of the draw for what airport you go to. Didn't actually end up being a big deal, because although it took me probably 25 minutes to get through the regular immigration line instead of the breeze through the 2-second global entry kiosks, my bag still had not come out by the time I got through immigration. So it didn't end up being a huge deal anyway. But at least having the mobile passport control app and getting the QR code, it takes 5 minutes. If they don't have the line, then that's fine. But if they do, then I've heard and I've read about people just breezing through those lines. Now, really the last thing you can do, apart from waiting and getting more and more frustrated with each passing day that goes by, and take this piece of advice with a grain of salt, but I think this is actually what ended up working for me and getting me my approval, was when I came back from an international trip. So I did not have global entry. As I said, I arrived through Chicago O'Hare, and then the next morning at 6 a.m., I think I received an email saying there was an update in my status. I logged into my application and I was approved without the need for another interview, which is awesome. So this is what I mean when I say you're put in the renewal queue, even though you've let your membership expire. So there's a good chance that you may not have to go through another interview. Some people do have to get interviewed again, and that sucks because finding interviews right now, I've heard, is really hard. I know Miami has ample availability, so if you're near Miami, that's lucky. And you can also get interviewed upon arrival from an international trip if you have been conditionally approved, but that's not, arrival times are weird. There's not always guaranteed to be someone working there that can do that. But here's my thought on why I'm suggesting to take an international trip. I think something about coming back, having my new passport processed through the system, whatever the holdup was on the other side, because it would be the biggest coincidence in the world that at 6 a.m. the next day, that's just when someone got around to approving my application. It makes a lot more sense that if there was any type of hold on, well, the information we had on the passport was old, we need to find somebody who needs to review this, hasn't had the time to do it yet. I think there was some block that was lifted when my new passport was approved. And I've actually anecdotally heard of this happening to other people, either with respect to their renewal application or their initial application. They come back from a trip and they're approved the next day. I think I've heard this from at least 4 or 5 other people based on seen in a Facebook group that I'm a part of that talks about this stuff. So if nothing else, this could get you over that threshold because your passport will have been approved, and whatever kind of verification they needed on their side any barriers they had down will go up. So that's really the best advice I can give you. But just to recap here, if your membership expired, you have to go through the renewal process. You don't keep any benefits while that is going on. Whereas if you didn't let it expire, you would continue to have benefits while they're processing your renewal application. Consider signing up for TSA PreCheck or Clear in the meantime if getting through security here in the States is important to you. Getting through security quickly is important to you. And yeah, if nothing else, or if you already have an international trip planned, you can lament the fact that you may have long lines arriving, but keep your fingers crossed that your application may be approved the next day. So I hope that is helpful to you guys. I know it was a long video, but I wanted to give you kind of all the tips and everything I went through, especially with my passport being different. That was frustrating, but it was, I think, a great tip from the Trusted Traveler hotline to actually go to the local office and have them upload my new passport into my account. So I hope that helps. Please leave any questions below, or also if you have had a similar experience and want to provide any information about your experience, that would be wonderful. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great one.